am Clara, and the elegant, sophisticated housewarming party I had spent 6 months planning for our new home exploded into absolute, embarrassing chaos precisely 40 minutes after my mother-in-law, Vivian Sterling, had finished her condescending toast. The music was loud, a bespoke jazz trio playing in the corner, the champagne was flowing, and the mood among my curated list of high-profile guests was genuinely triumphant, a mood Vivian clearly found utterly intolerable. Just as I was laughing with my best friend about the perfection of the evening, a terrifying high-pitched wail sliced through the evening air. The unmistakable, stomach-dropping shriek of multiple approaching sirens, growing louder with impossible speed. A moment later, 2 massive fire trucks, lights blazing chaotic scarlet, skidded to a jarring stop right outside my newly landscaped front lawn, followed instantly by a stern squad car. The chief, a tall man with a grim official expression, stomped past the stunned guests, his heavy boots marking the polished floor, addressing me directly. "Ma'am, we received an anonymous 911 call reporting a catastrophic gas leak and dangerous overcrowding. We have to evacuate the premises immediately." My heart plummeted like a stone, the acid shame of public humiliation searing my face. But the true, sickening shock came when I glanced across the room. Vivian stood near the kitchen island, clutching a perfectly empty champagne glass. Her lips pulled into a tiny, venomous smirk that was gone in an instant. She didn't look startled, she looked triumphant. She knew exactly what she had done. She had ruined my moment, and the war she started was now public, undeniable, and utterly devastating. The chief's authoritative command shattered the sophisticated celebratory atmosphere, sending my 60 meticulously chosen guests scrambling for the exits and spilling expensive wine onto the hardwood floors. My carefully orchestrated evening, a symbol of my hard-won success, was instantly reduced to a public spectacle of flashing blue and red emergency lights and shouted commands. As the firemen, armed with thermal cameras and gas detectors, swept through the house, tearing down streamers and disrupting every artfully arranged floral centerpiece, the humiliation was absolute and total. My husband, Marcus, bless his eternally naive heart, rushed to my side. His face a mask of profound confusion and desperate apology, whispering frantic excuses about an unbelievable neighborhood mistake or a prank gone wrong. But I couldn't tear my eyes away from Vivian, who stood calmly amidst the pandemonium, engaging my father-in-law in a forced, lively conversation, loudly proclaiming how dangerous and irresponsible large gatherings were in new homes. Her eyes, however, kept flickering back to me, holding that predatory, icy gleam of satisfaction that confirmed everything. That look confirmed my immediate, sickening suspicion. This wasn't an accident, and it certainly wasn't a mistake. This was a calculated, vicious act of sabotage orchestrated by the one person who resented my happiness and financial independence more than anyone else in the world. The stakes were no longer about a party. They were about defending my marriage, my autonomy, and my new home from the toxic, relentless invasion of a cruel matriarch. I knew then that my vow to Marcus would be tested not by life's inherent difficulties, but by the escalating malice of his mother. The corrosive history of Vivian's toxicity was long and densely documented, an unending series of calculated digs masked expertly as helpful advice and maternal concern. From the very moment Marcus and I started dating, I was deemed inadequate, too ambitious, and too independent for her precious, fragile son, who she clearly viewed as an extension of her own ego. Our decision to purchase this house, our first home together, which I had substantially financed with my own hard-earned savings, was the final, unforgivable offense. The house, a sprawling modern design with floor-to-ceiling windows, symbolized my professional success and our complete, undeniable financial independence from the Sterling family's overbearing influence. Vivian had desperately pushed us toward a small, older apartment she conveniently owned, where she could maintain proximity, surveillance, and suffocating control. My resolute refusal was the catalyst for this escalating war. The housewarming party was intended to be a proclamation of our joint autonomy. Instead, Vivian had brutally turned it into a public display of her ability to infiltrate, disrupt, and destroy my most cherished personal moments. Marcus, raised in a permanent fog of her emotional manipulation and relentless criticism, was crippled by conflict avoidance, forever desperate to placate her demands. The emotional core of this conflict was terrifyingly clear. I wasn't just fighting a mother-in-law. I was fighting for my husband's total liberation and the fundamental sanctity of my own life. The immediate aftermath of the evacuation was critical and felt like a strategic withdrawal. Once the fire chief, looking increasingly annoyed, confirmed there was definitively no gas leak, only excessive crowd density, a subtle jab since we were well under the legal capacity, the true nature of the 911 call was chillingly clear. It was a malicious mischief report designed purely to cause maximum disruption. Marcus, utterly mortified and sweating profusely, tried desperately to apologize to the departing guests, while Vivian played the perfectly concerned family elder, offering the fireman bottled water and loudly lamenting the frightful expense and trouble of the whole ordeal. But I was already in pure tactical mode, my mind racing ahead. I pulled the fire chief aside, pressing him for any scrap of information about the call. He was initially reluctant, citing privacy laws and department policy, but my direct gaze and calm, insistent demeanor, emphasizing that this was targeted, planned harassment and potential abuse of public resources, made him relent slightly. The twist: the chief confirmed the call came from a blocked number, but the voice, he recalled with absolute certainty, was distinctive, older, very formal, and oddly specific about the crowd size, almost reading from notes. The description, though vague, screamed Vivian's precise, condescending formality. I was denied the hard, prosecutable evidence, but the circumstantial certainty was now a burning, undeniable conviction. My next step was not to confront her, but to set a discreet, unbreakable digital trap to force her confirmation. My covert investigation began immediately, fueled by the adrenaline of righteous fury and a deep, cold sense of violation. Marcus, meanwhile, retreated into deep denial, clinging to the flimsy, safer hope that it was a rival from my old neighborhood or a random disgruntled delivery driver seeking spiteful revenge. "We can't accuse Mom, Clara. You know how sensitive she is to unfounded accusations," he pleaded, embodying the precise emotional paralysis I had to find a cure for. I ignored him, my focus laser-sharp. The new hook: I covertly contacted my younger cousin, Liam, a brilliant, discreet tech expert who owed me a significant favor, tasking him with cross-referencing all blocked calls to our local 911 dispatch within that critical 15-minute window with known call patterns made by prepaid burner phones in Vivian's general zip code. This entire process was unorthodox and perhaps legally gray, but I was past caring about niceties. While Liam worked his silent digital magic, I focused on the social sphere. I began dropping deliberate, false, highly specific anecdotes about the party's failure. Fictional disasters like the cake collapsing or a major client being present, during small talk with key family friends, testing precisely how the fabricated information filtered back to her. My goal wasn't just proof. It was to establish an undeniable pattern of malicious intent, strengthening my case for when the final public confrontation inevitably arrived. 2 long, agonizing days later, Liam delivered the first, devastating piece of hard evidence that obliterated all doubt. He couldn't legally intercept the recorded voice, but he had managed to cross-reference the exact call time, duration, and location data using cell tower triangulation. The twist was chilling. The blocked call was definitively routed through a specific prepaid burner phone that was activated and deactivated within minutes, and that phone had only ever pinged in 2 hyper-specific locations: Vivian's high-rise apartment and her weekly, exclusive bridge club in the affluent suburbs. It was 99% confirmation, a digital signature of her malice. I felt a cold knot tighten violently in my stomach. The humiliation of the party was real, but the level of calculated, sophisticated effort she expended was truly chilling. I placed the detailed technical report, printed cleanly and officially on heavy stock, directly on Marcus's desk, along with a simple, cold note. "Read this. We need to talk." This maneuver forced him out of his safe haven of denial and directly confronted him with the horrific truth he was desperate to avoid. The stakes for our marriage were now terminal. I needed him to definitively confront this evidence and stand unreservedly with his wife, or I would confront his mother alone, and he would permanently lose his place in our future. Marcus reacted precisely as I feared he would, true to his conditioning, with instant confusion, rising anger, and a desperate, toxic avoidance of reality. He slammed the technical report down onto the glass surface of the desk. "This is absurd, Clara. You hired a private investigator over a stupid party. This is paranoia. Mom would never do something so petty and dangerous." His anger, I noted with cold clarity, wasn't aimed at his mother's calculated felony, but at my cold, logical pursuit of the truth that shattered his worldview. His emotional fragility was, I realized, a larger, more formidable enemy than Vivian's open malice. I stood my ground, my voice low and dangerously steady. "It wasn't petty, Marcus. It was premeditated sabotage, using public emergency services to publicly shame and disrupt my professional standing. She committed a felony, and right now, your inaction is actively protecting her." The confrontation immediately escalated into the fiercest, most painful argument of our entire marriage, a brutal exchange that threatened to dismantle everything we had painstakingly built together. The emotional core shifted violently. My desire for revenge was now utterly secondary to the survival of my marriage. I delivered my ultimatum, not in blinding anger, but with firm, absolute resolve. "I will not live another day under this toxic shadow. You either confront this irrefutable evidence and stand with your wife, or I will confront her alone, and you will forever choose your side." My husband, paralyzed between the collapse of his peace and the imminent, terrifying collapse of his marriage, chose the path of agonizing, doomed compromise. He finally agreed to confront Vivian, but only privately, to spare her public humiliation and potential legal exposure. I accepted his terms, knowing with absolute certainty that a private confrontation would inevitably lead to her brilliant, tearful denial and his swift, inevitable capitulation. But I knew it was a necessary, unavoidable step to exhaust his denial mechanisms. The meeting was set for a tense, awkward Sunday dinner at their immaculate, stiflingly quiet apartment. The major hook was my meticulous preparation. I did not go unarmed. I brought the silver voice recorder, ready to capture her definitive response, knowing her denials would be far more important and legally damaging than any confession. During the excruciating dinner, Marcus, visibly shaking and avoiding eye contact, presented the evidence: Liam's tracking report and the fire chief's confirmed call details. Vivian didn't miss a beat. She erupted instantly in a brilliant, calculated display of wounded martyrdom, clutching her chest and dissolving into floods of tears, accusing me of hiring spies and destroying her family with my paranoid delusions. Marcus immediately folded, rushing to comfort her. But she didn't realize the sensitive microphone on the table, discreetly hidden under a velvet napkin, was capturing every syllable of her entire Oscar-worthy performance of denial and evasion. The emotional tension of that Sunday dinner was suffocating, thick enough to cut with a knife, and the predictable result was exactly what I had feared. Marcus was instantly neutralized, swallowed whole by the familiar, practiced performance of his mother's fragility. Vivian, once she had secured Marcus's absolute comfort and devotion, turned her full fury directly on me. Her eyes suddenly dry and razor-sharp, brimming with cold, focused malice. "You are an unstable, obsessed little girl, Clara," she hissed, her voice low enough so Marcus wouldn't fully hear the sheer menace. "If you continue to pursue this foolish path, I will make absolutely sure the market knows exactly how paranoid, delusional, and professionally destructive you truly are." This was a direct, chilling, and utterly unambiguous threat to my professional reputation and livelihood. I left that dinner empty-handed in terms of justice, but dangerously rich in damning evidence. A clear recording of her calculated denial, her unmasked aggression toward me, and her chilling professional threat. The counterstrike was now planned in my mind, moving definitively from the weakness of defense to the power of offense. I realized my initial goal of quiet justice was wholly insufficient. Vivian required a public, irreversible humiliation that would permanently cauterize the toxic wound she represented to my life and marriage. My primary strategy shifted from emotional confrontation to cold, hard financial leverage, the one area where Vivian had absolutely zero power or influence over me. The initial down payment, the entirety of the renovation costs, and all the subsequent mortgage payments for the house had been paid entirely by me, using my savings, a detail Vivian constantly and deliberately ignored, referring to it dismissively as Marcus's new house. I decided to use the next major family gathering, a formal traditional Christmas dinner at her sister's house, as the stage for my first targeted counterstrike of financial reality. The hook. I instructed our corporate lawyer, Anya, without Marcus's immediate knowledge, to draft a notarized, irrevocable document officially establishing my exclusive ownership of the house's equity, giving Marcus joint occupancy but clearly defining my complete financial contribution and unassailable control. I then had the deed delivered to me just hours before the Christmas dinner. My immediate goal was not to play the recording yet, but to establish a new, unassailable, legal financial reality. I was signaling to Vivian that her power was obsolete, and my professional independence was now permanently enshrined in immutable legal documentation. The Christmas dinner was the perfect, highly controlled, and densely populated environment for the first public punch against Vivian's social standing. We were surrounded by extended family, aunts and uncles who still treated Vivian as a benevolent, untouchable deity of family tradition. The moment came during the traditional gift exchange. I waited patiently until Vivian unwrapped a small, insignificant scarf from Marcus. Then I cleared my throat dramatically, standing up with a fixed, unyielding smile. I have one more gift for the family, one of clarity and necessary financial transparency. I presented Marcus with the notarized deed, detailing my 100% equity stake in the property. The collective gasp in the room was immediate, deafening, and louder than any noise the fire trucks had made months ago. Vivian's face, initially frozen in confusion, quickly contorted into pure, sputtering fury as she realized the true, devastating meaning of the document. "This is outrageous. You're trying to take control. This is Marcus's house, not yours," she shrieked, exactly as I knew she would, betraying her core belief in her financial authority. The confrontation instantly escalated from silent seating to a full-blown family feud. Vivian, enraged that her financial control and narrative were openly challenged, launched into a vicious public attack, calling me a greedy little opportunist, claiming I was manipulating Marcus's finances and demanding to see my tax returns. The unexpected twist. My father-in-law, usually passive, silent, and entirely subservient to Vivian's will, intervened decisively. He stood up, towering over the table. "Vivian, sit down. The house legally belongs to the person who paid for it." His intervention was small in words, but it provided a monumental public crack in her impenetrable social defense. I used the noise as cover, leaning into Vivian with cold, focused calm. "The house is mine, Vivian, legally and financially," I whispered, maintaining eye contact. "Just like the anonymous phone call that brought the fire trucks here was yours. And I have that on tape." Her face went entirely white, realizing I wasn't bluffing. I had secured a crucial moral victory, proving my financial strength and hinting at the deeper, criminal legal evidence I possessed. The stakes were permanently raised. I was now an open, active, and highly dangerous threat. Vivian's predictable retaliation was swift, strategic, and far more vicious than I had initially anticipated. The house humiliation and the public financial exposure had pushed her past the point of simple envy. She was now fighting desperately for social and professional survival. The major escalation. She targeted my professional life with surgical precision. I managed a high-profile digital marketing contract for a major luxury brand, a contract she knew defined my career and my income bracket. 2 weeks after the chaotic Christmas dinner, my client called me, their voice hesitant, thick with discomfort, explaining they were immediately terminating my lucrative contract due to unsubstantiated but persistent rumors about my instability and paranoia. The twist. My trusted industry contact immediately traced the source of the malicious rumors directly back to a retired executive Vivian was friends with, who had actively, methodically spread the lie that I was under investigation for mental instability. She wasn't just ruining a party. She was attempting full-scale career assassination, aiming to destroy my livelihood. The devastating loss of the contract cost me over 6 figures in immediate revenue and was a brutal, targeted psychological blow that momentarily threatened to validate her claims. I finally understood the true, terrifying scope of her malignancy. This wasn't passive aggression. This was scorched earth warfare, pure and simple. Marcus, witnessing the severe real-world consequences of his mother's malicious actions, the loss of my income, the look of panic on my face, finally snapped entirely out of his denial. The emotional core of my marriage was salvaged in that dark moment as he stood unequivocally by me, horrified by the clear, documented evidence of his mother's clinical malignancy. "I am so sorry, Clara. We have to stop her permanently," he choked out, his eyes finally wide open, seeing the truth without the emotional filter of his childhood. His conversion was the crucial, absolute element of my final revenge plan. I realized that my most potent weapon wasn't the recording or the deed. It was the public, unassailable truth, delivered by Marcus himself, to dismantle her social standing. Our unified focus shifted entirely to finding the ultimate leverage, a catastrophic secret from Vivian's own past that would destroy her social credibility and public persona entirely. I tasked Liam, the brilliant tech cousin, with a deeper, more invasive digital and financial dive into Vivian's history, pushing back 20 years. Marcus, now fully committed and driven by guilt and fury, provided the necessary logins and access to old family documents and financial records. The stakes became dangerously high. We were digging up literal buried skeletons that could destroy her life. The twist: Liam, after days of relentless searching, uncovered an obscure sealed court document from exactly 20 years ago. It was a bankruptcy filing, but the details were strangely inconsistent. The filing referenced the mysterious collapse of a small local children's charity Vivian had managed, followed immediately by a sudden, large, unexplained payment to an offshore account. The financial irregularity was heavily veiled, but the potential scandal was immense and career-ending. The sealed court document was the nuclear option, the ultimate, final weapon in my arsenal. It suggested, with terrifying clarity, that Vivian hadn't just filed bankruptcy. She had potentially embezzled hundreds of thousands of dollars from a children's charity before using family influence to seal the records and rebuild her life on her husband's family money. The sheer, breathtaking hypocrisy of her public persona as a philanthropic matriarch was staggering. This was the ultimate, irreversible leverage that would destroy her identity. The only remaining problem was the highly sealed nature of the records. I needed a sharp lawyer, Anya, my property lawyer, to legally unseal the documents using the irrefutable threat of the ongoing 911 fraud investigation and the evidence of professional harassment as legal pretext. Marcus was utterly terrified. "If this gets out, Dad will leave her, Clara. It will destroy them both," he pleaded. But I was resolute. "She tried to destroy my career, Marcus. We use this to establish permanent, lasting peace. Not total destruction, but total submission." My revenge had a specific, surgical goal: permanent, quiet banishment from our lives. The final public stage for the confrontation needed to be undeniable, social, and perfectly controlled to maximize impact. We chose the annual Sterling Family Foundation Gala, a massive event where Vivian reigned supreme as the undisputed head of the charity committee, an entire career built entirely on the illusion of her selfless goodness. This was her public altar, her moment of sanctification. I knew she would use the event to smear me further among the city's elite, reinforcing her false narrative. My meticulously planned counterplan was simple: publicly unseal the document during the gala, linking the suspicious collapse of her old charity with the rise of the current foundation she now controlled. The ultimate, devastating twist: Marcus would be the one to present the evidence, not me. He would deliver the definitive, unassailable proof of her profound hypocrisy, ensuring her manipulation of him would be laid bare for everyone to see. The day of the gala was tense, charged with an electric sense of dread, excitement, and immense pressure. Marcus was pale, visibly terrified of confronting his mother so publicly, but his resolve was absolute. I wore the same scarlet dress I had almost worn to the disastrous housewarming, a silent, powerful nod to the original battleground. Anya, my corporate lawyer, arrived discreetly, carrying the legally unsealed court documents in a thin, elegant portfolio. I spent the crucial hour before the reveal coaching Marcus, reminding him that this was his choice, his freedom, and his last chance to permanently save our future. The entire plan hinged on one moment, Vivian's traditional self-aggrandizing speech about the virtue of selfless giving. When she finished, Marcus would interrupt, demanding a right of reply, cementing his choice for the entire room. Vivian's speech was predictably sickening, full of false humility, veiled passive-aggressive digs at unspecified, disruptive elements, and glowing references to her decades of commitment to vulnerable families. She then pointedly excluded me from the list of family supporters, a minor but predictable final insult. As the polite, obligatory applause started, Marcus walked calmly and purposefully onto the stage, interrupting the final ovation. The entire room, full of city elites and media personalities, fell silent, sensing the profound shift in atmosphere. He looked directly at his mother, bypassing the microphone. "Before we continue, Mom," Marcus's voice was strong though slightly trembling, "my wife, Clara, and I need to address a painful truth about this foundation." He then walked decisively to the microphone, his hands gripping the stand like a lifeline. Marcus didn't use the fire department recording or mention the job loss. He went straight for the heart of her power and reputation. He held up the unsealed court document, the light catching the official stamp, the ultimate devastating reveal. He quietly read the financial summary, detailing the $300,000 disappearance from the old charity and the subsequent private settlement, ensuring the media, who were present, would get the entire unedited story. Vivian, initially stunned into silence, attempted to rush the stage, screaming incoherent denials. Security intervened instantly, restraining her. Marcus finished his statement, his voice ringing with newfound authority. "This foundation is built on a lie, a history of betrayal. My wife and I will be reporting this information to the authorities, and we demand an immediate, independent audit." He then looked directly at his father, who was watching in stunned silence, a profound look of disappointment and defeat crossing his face. Vivian was escorted out of the gala, struggling and screaming, not by my people, but by her own foundation's security, her entire career in philanthropy permanently incinerated. The media frenzy was instantaneous, deafening and absolute. Marcus, still on stage, was immediately mobbed by reporters. I walked calmly onto the stage, took his hand firmly, and spoke directly to the cameras. "My husband and I stand for integrity and transparency above all else." My revenge was complete, surgical, and effective. The legal fallout was swift. The foundation's assets were frozen, and the official police investigation began. The final consequence for Vivian was total social, professional, and marital banishment. The ensuing weeks were a chaotic media storm, but Marcus and I were united, protected by our shared truth and the legal armor provided by Anya. Marcus's father, devastated but morally upright, filed for separation from Vivian, giving Marcus the quiet peace he needed and securing his own integrity. My contract loss was immediately replaced by 2 new, larger contracts, earned on the undeniable strength of my crisis management and integrity. The final, sweet financial resolution. Marcus's father secretly offered us a 7-figure investment in my newly formed company as a gesture of profound apology and unwavering support for our future. We accepted, realizing that Vivian's malice had, ultimately, resulted in our financial and marital success. The toxic shadow was gone. The true resolution was quiet, final, and entirely focused on building our future together. Vivian vanished from our lives, spending her time fighting increasingly desperate legal battles and dealing with the wreckage of her social standing. We never saw her again. The original wedding vow, the commitment to honesty and partnership, was proven true under the highest pressure. We made the final symbolic choice to sell the house, not because we had to, but because we wanted a fresh start, far from any lingering ghosts of the fire trucks. We bought a secluded home, paid for entirely by my work, and hosted a small, quiet, stress-free second housewarming party with only our closest friends. No dramatic speeches, no hidden recorders, and certainly no fire trucks. Just peace. I often think about the day the fire trucks arrived. It was the lowest moment, the absolute humiliation. But that day also taught me the most vital lesson. True love isn't about ignoring problems. It's about facing the fire together and using the truth as your final weapon. I smiled, looking across the room at Marcus. He was genuinely happy, finally free from his mother's suffocating influence. I raised my glass to him, not in revenge, but in profound gratitude. The recovery of my professional reputation was swift and total. The media's fascination with the gala scandal painted me as a decisive, ethical figure who exposed corruption, attracting new, high-caliber clients who valued my integrity and crisis management skills. I not only replaced the six-figure contract loss but quickly surpassed my previous income, founding a boutique consulting firm specializing in ethical brand building. Marcus, using the settlement money from his father, left his suffocating corporate job and became my firm's finance director, finally utilizing his talent without his mother's interference. This collaborative venture was the truest form of our autonomy. Vivian's punishment was agonizingly precise and poetic. Stripped of her social platform and facing public scrutiny over the charity funds, she became a pariah. Her friends abandoned her husband divorced her, and the high-rise apartment she loved was sold to cover legal fees. I heard whispers that she was reduced to giving private etiquette lessons to make ends meet, a devastating irony for the woman who considered herself the ultimate social authority. The humiliation was total because it was self-inflicted, built on the wreckage of the foundation she had worshipped. The final act of severance was the symbolic sale of the house. Though it represented my financial victory, it also held the memory of the fire trucks and the first betrayal. We oversaw the closing on a cold morning, signing the papers with a quiet sense of finality. The money from the sale and my accumulated wealth allowed us to buy a secluded, architectural masterpiece far away from the city's gossiping elite, a home chosen purely for its privacy and sense of sanctuary. We chose a property overlooking a quiet lake, a place where tranquility was the only guest. Our lives settled into a pattern of deep, respectful happiness. Our relationship with Marcus's father healed completely. He became a beloved figure, now free from his own toxic marriage. He often visited, laughing easily, a man finally enjoying his later years. The legacy of Vivian's malice was that we had learned the true, brutal definition of a partnership. We were unbreakable because we had faced the worst together and emerged cleaner, stronger, and more fiercely committed than ever before. Every quiet evening, every successful project, every shared moment of laughter was a silent, powerful testament to her failure. I realized that Vivian's attempt to destroy my housewarming party didn't just fail. It provided the catalyst for my total liberation and the restructuring of my entire life. I had gone from being the recipient of her passive aggression to being the architect of her professional and social collapse, all in the name of self-preservation. I achieved not just revenge, but permanent, lasting peace and an unshakable marriage. The toxic shadow was gone forever. My life, my home, and my husband were finally, completely, and irrevocably mine.